What's happening, folks? We're back with the next phase or next chapter of the Classical Days journey on day 3. And this is one that has been waiting for a very long time and was actually one of my motivating factors to do this special series of classical reactions that I've dubbed Classical Days. And that is a multi-symphonic tone poem suite, though it was not originally conceived that way, more on that in a moment, by Bedřich, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his given name, but Smetana, a Czech composer known for some pieces like My Country, which is essentially what this collection of tone poems is referred to as, and The Bartered Bride, which, as far as I know, is the only piece that I'm more than a little bit familiar with, so this will be, I think, uncharted territory for me. I'm very excited. And yes, Michaela sent this to me a while back. I really do appreciate not only this, but all the music you've sent me and the patience, so we're finally here to do it. And it has a detailed booklet in multiple languages that I've tried to prepare a little bit by reading, but the text is quite small, so I'm not going to try to strain too much. I'm just going to try to recall from memory. But yes, this is a series of symphonic tone poems that Smetana originally conceived of as separate individual works. However, over time, they were collected and began to be performed together, so it was something that I think he eventually recognized could work as a larger suite of symphonic tone poems. In any case, the first one, I think, roughly translates to the High Castle, and as it says in the booklet here, there's a mythologizing of this hill fort, which was apparently very significant. So it speaks to, does this suite overall, different aspects of Bohemia, which is one of the historical phrases used for the area that we now regard as the Czech Republic. So yes, ultimately this one I think translates to the High Castle or the hill fort, and it is notably lengthy. I think it's about 15 minutes in this recording, so we'll get straight to it. Once again, thank you to Michaela. This is the Collegium 1704 Orchestra, as conducted by Václav Lux, and it is Smetana's opening tone poem in the suite referred to as My Country, and it is ultimately translated as the High Castle. Where's my tea? Okay. That's interesting. So, like, they clearly recorded it. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I imagine most symphonies are like that. But, you could hear the musicians, like, okay, like resetting and, adjusting the score and so on. So there was, like, a bit more of a between the movements moment there than you typically get in a recording, which is to say, post recording, I imagine a lot of symphonies or concertos with multiple movements, they just cut out those intervening handful of seconds. Nevertheless, it's incredible. So, a lot of thoughts over the course of it. Like, number one, we get a sense of the love and pride that Smetana is trying to convey here with, again, what I understand to be like a historical legend in terms of, the foundation or the establishment of these crucial aspects of Bohemia. And I definitely hear, again, the pride, the admiration for this high castle or hill fort and the role that it played. I hear a sense of heroic action and just the righteousness of the heroes maybe who manned the fort or who used the fort as a means to establish the country, shall we say, which, like, I saw online also, this is sometimes translated as my fatherland. So again, I guess it depends on the nuances of interpretation, but essentially the meaning is the same. The idea that this is the foundations of what became Bohemia, and I definitely hear that. I also hear peril and a sense of danger. Let's say, the opposing armies or other, people who would have torn the fort down or sacked it. It's like there's moments where it sounds like they're advancing upon the hill, but then again, the sense of duty and obligation and national pride seems to win out, and there's sections that sound like they're action packed, but in a triumphant and regal sort of way. There's moments where it sounds like almost like a heartbeat on a larger scale, and I feel like that's again the idea that this was at the core of like the being that came from this initial establishment. And there was one other sort of emotion. Oh, the like sort of earnest. There was an earnest quality to some of it, which maybe speaks to the humanity and even the simplicity. So it's like, yes, these are legendary heroes, but they were also human. They also felt. They also had worries or concerns, but they did what they had to do, and they expressed this national character. So I felt all of that over the course of the piece. And indeed, it did have different sections, like I said, some feeling a bit more intense and action packed, but then triumphant, smooth. There were definitely these, building, rolling, drum heavy sections, which again gives you a sense of martial duty or, national honor. So I felt a lot of different sentiments over the course of it. And it had, of course, great string work. As I said, lots of drums. There's definitely like harp, and I don't even know if there was like a plucked instrument which didn't sound like those big long strokes of a harp, but like maybe something else. But they didn't sound like violins or cellos played pizzicato either. So yeah, there were a couple moments where I was like, what is that like plucked element that I'm hearing or instrument? Nevertheless, very beautiful, sweeping, powerful, and legendary, heroic. So, yes, I believe Smetana's intent with this tone poem very much came across. So, my understanding that the next one is what is sometimes translated in English as the Moldau, which my understanding is it's the Moldau. And then how is it? It's like Vltava. I guess that's how you say it in Czech. Nevertheless, this is the one that I'm thinking I probably have heard before, because not only do I think that's the case just historically, and I think it's in Notame, am I remembering that correctly, Michaela? But I am aware through the manual here that it is by far the most famous tone poem in the larger suite. So yes, my expectation is that I will recognize it, but I'm looking forward to all of them. Thank you again to Michaela. Let me know what you think of this opening movement, and I'll be right back with the next one. Peace.